Welcome to the first internet book show. Join me for the next half hour with Naomi Wood, Swan and Louise Johncox in Book Break. Hello and welcome. I'm Alex Heminsley and this is Book Break. Today is the first of 10 monthly episodes where I will be joined by some of the world's biggest authors to celebrate all things books related. So, for the next half an hour or so, grab a sandwich, put up your feet and relax as we take a wander through the literary world. Today, I am joined by Naomi Wood, the author of The Godless Boys, and the soon-to-be released Mrs Hemingway, author of Christmas at Claridges, Swan, and last but not least, for all your Friday afternoon sugar cravings, food journalist and author Louise Johncox is going to talk to us about all things culinary, especially cakes. Also coming up on today's show, his novels are dark and full of murder and intrigue. Crime writer Peter James takes us on a tour of his writing room. We'll separate the wheat from the chaff and reveal the hottest books to buy this year. And one author will face our quick-fire questions. Ladies, welcome. So, Naomi, you're here to talk about Mrs Hemingway, but your debut's already been published. So how was it getting back in the saddle after sort of first literary book?
It actually wasn't too difficult because I was facing a rather tight turnaround, shall we say. There was a deadline looming. So I actually finished The Godless Boys, the first book, on the Friday, had a weekend off, and then started on the Monday. So I had to get back into it really quickly.
Yeah.
Needless to say, that has not happened this time around. I finished Mrs Hemingway in November and haven't written a thing since.
You've had a nice little Christmas.
I've had a lovely holiday break. So, yes, getting back into it was fine, but I haven't started the third. No, I didn't. I was still very firmly on the horse.
But they were completely different kinds of books, because The Godless Boys is quite sort of fantastical and sort of dystopian universe, and this Mrs Hemingway, you had to read a lot of biographies first and get all your facts lined up before you started messing with them. So did you sort of panic at having to do something completely different?
Well, I think they are completely different projects. As you say, The Godless Boys is a kind of dystopia, and Mrs Hemingway is based on all this research about Hemingway's 4 wives. But the two endeavours are essentially the same thing, because you're still world building, you're still trying to sort of ask the reader to feel like they're in Key West or Cuba or Paris or all these places that I had to go to for research, which was a massive chore. But it wasn't. I didn't find it too much of a different endeavour, although...
Just that you could have done... That was why you kept going to Cuba and all of
that.
You didn't have enough of a break.
It was really nice. Yeah, my accountant kept on looking at my receipts and going, really? Cuba, Key West? But it was different because there was a huge amount of research I had to do, which took, this full span of 3 years. And, with The Godless Boys, it was an imagined world, and I could do what I liked, whereas a lot of the time I was writing with sort of research books open in the British Library and sort of referring to things here and there. So there was so much more research to do. It's just a different, kind of business writing historical fiction, trying to keep a lot of the facts, straight. So. And
Karen, you had Christmas at Claridges only a couple of months ago. You've got another one coming up.
Yes.
So, I mean, I fear the bar has been set quite high industry. But how do you kind of keep disciplined? You're kind of on sort of quite a schedule, and you've got the deadline kind of built into your titles now.
Yes, I do.
How do you have schedules?
I have to. You have to treat it as a job. It is I'm working every day. And very often weekends. I don't work in the evenings, actually, because I'm too exhausted. But, I do work very often 7 days a week. And that's fine, because actually when I'm having a good day at work, it's an absolute breeze and it doesn't feel like work at all. Obviously, on those bad days when you can barely get 50 words down, you just think, oh, and you're very aware then of your word count and, oh my God, I'm going to fall behind. But, it is a job, and I like the fact that I can, you know, I get readers emailing me December, January, Feb, having read the Christmas book, saying, well, when's the next one?
Yeah.
And I'd say, oh, it's kind of November. And you could almost hear this sigh over the interweb, you know, oh, God.
Yeah.
And so now I say, well, it's in May, actually, you know, and you can have it for your summer holidays. And I like the fact that I can deliver that. And that's what I'm doing it for now.
Yeah. And Louise, yours was a completely different process. You're completely based in fact and history because it is your history. So how did that kind of come about for you, sort of writing a baking and family history together?
My family had run and owned their own tea shop for over 42 years, and whenever I wrote about cakes, everyone seemed to like it, so I carried on.
And where were you writing about cakes? It was...
I started off as a PhD at Bath Spa University, which sounds like a very odd PhD. Very academic. And then obviously, as I started to write about the cakes, I realised I actually needed to bake them as well. But I'm not a chef, I'm not a trained chef.
Miami over here.
Yeah, of course.
I'll be known as that, happily.
So one day my father said, I think it's time you got your hands messy and come into the kitchen, and together he taught me how to bake the recipes from the tea shop. And then as we baked, he actually told me stories, and so the whole tea shop came back alive again for me. The sights and the scents and the tastes of the cakes.
Yeah. And so we've got Mrs Hemingway here, but there isn't a Mrs Hemingway. No. There's four.
Trick is in the title.
They came quite fast after each other as well, perhaps some overlapping. So that's where we are with this book. It isn't just, oh, here's Mrs Hemingway's biography.
Yes,
it's a handful.
Yeah, exactly. It's told from the point of view of each Mrs Hemingway. There were four. He was a cad. And basically it tells the story of each time wife one meets mistress two becomes wife two, meets mistress three. And there's this kind of
incredible one-upmanship.
Yeah, I know. It's awful.
And he's got quite a kind of proper wife, and you think, well, obviously this kind of super hot flapper. No-brainer. And I'm thinking, but it says on the back of the book there's four. How is it? And then suddenly Martha Gellhorn pops up.
Yeah, I know.
Like superhero woman.
Yeah, I know. It was so brilliant to write her because. You know, I think what's really hard about writing historical fiction is that you don't want to import all of the 21st century's ideas, sort of post-feminist ideas about womanhood, about how to, you know, be a wife in a marriage. And the first two feel very much pre that because they're willing to put up with so much. And then Martha Gellhorn comes along, thank goodness, and saves the day. So yeah, there's this kind of carousel of wives and mistresses, and they turn each decade over the 4 decades that he's married. And there's he spent 0 days single between wives. Wow. He was unwed for a period, but didn't actually spend a day on his own, which makes me think, you know, that uber masculine man walking around shooting lions and doing deep sea fishing and doing all these things couldn't actually bear to be alone in bed for one night.
Did any of the women become friends?
Yes, Hadley and Fife, or Pauline Pfeiffer, were friends in the beginning. Right. And then Pauline Pfeiffer became friends with the fourth wife because, as Mary said, they were all part of the Hemingway University.
Yes.
It's great, though. You see the sort of shifting sands between them, and you think, well, you know, on page 30.
Imagine if they'd all banded up against him. What an alliance that would have been.
I wish they had, sometimes.
Superhero group. But Ernest, or I feel now I can call him Nesto after reading it. He's this kind of source of fascination, and he pops up in fiction, he's popped up in films, in a Woody Allen film recently. Like, why do you think, I mean, the key to this book is the women's relationships, but it's still kind of pegged on this really charismatic person. What is it about?
I think, can I say, first and foremost, he was absolutely gorgeous. He, you know, dream to look at, very, very charming man. He had this great abundance of energy, which I think attracted people like Fitzgerald and Ezra Pound, and it also attracted sort of legions of women. And he combined this amazing sort of alchemy of being a sort of huge man's man, the boxing and the bullfighting and everything else, but also being a very sensitive soul who was trying to kind of create this new language in his work. So for me, it's kind of obvious why you would be attracted to someone like that. And as he got older, he was, you know, very rich and he was a celebrity in his own right. So, you know, if he'd invited me to go and live in Havana, I think I would have said yes, and I'll put up with the mistresses as well.
Are there any present-day writers you'd like to see the fictionalised treatment? Anybody you reckon will end up being?
Oh, I don't know. Philip Roth, maybe? Yeah. I think he'd be interesting, a sort of biopic of his life, maybe.
And this isn't a leading question. This is from Jax Blunt on Twitter, and she would like to know, it's quite a trick question, what's the book you most regret reading?
Oh, I don't know that I regret...
No meanness, please.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question without any meanness. I don't know that I regret reading any books. I mean, I suppose an interesting way of me thinking about it, because I've been in such a Hemingway hole of research for the past 3.5 years, is that people think I'm a fan of absolutely everything he's written, and there's certainly books that I just kind of can't bear.
Guys, do you have any that you sort of, like maybe even sort of, oh, I regret reading it because it was so good I couldn't put pen to paper for weeks?
Do you know, my favourite book is A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry. I love that book, and yet I hated it in that it is not an easy read, it's not a particularly pleasant read, but having said that, it's changed me as a result of reading it.
Yeah.
And it was worth the journey, but I read it years ago and I still think about it. And it was a very brutal story, but it was worth knowing, it was worth going through, because, you know, not all the best stories are happy, actually.
Sure. Louise, do you have any that you kind of...
I don't think I'd say I regret reading any book, because even if you don't necessarily like it, you maybe learn why you don't like it. And you learn what works really well and what moves you and what you like and what you want to read more of. I wouldn't say I've regretted any that I've read.
And guys, do keep in touch with us. If you have any questions for any of our authors, you can get in touch via Twitter, and the details should be on your screen now. Now, Karen, your journey to writing was kind of, it was via fashion journalism, so you weren't sort of, didn't go through the creative writing course, sort of. But when you, no, tell us the truth, when you were doing your journalism, were you sort of dreaming of novels, like, why must you harness me with your word count? Or did it sort of happen organically?
No. All my life, all my teachers, everyone who ever gets a thank you card from me, everyone said, you're going to be a writer. And I would say, no, I'm not. I don't know why you're saying this to me. Why do you say this to me? And I don't know, I think I have quite a distinctive style of writing, and for me it was just normal, but it struck other people. And
So people were reading your journalism and saying this should grow.
Exactly.
And,
but even if I wrote a thank you card for dinner, people would say, oh my God, your card. Yeah, thank you. And they were like, no, but I mean, you know, and I was thinking, oh gosh. And I got quite annoyed with it, actually, because it was always the thing that people would say to me. And I ended up in it really by accident. I'd written a non-fiction book after my first child was born, and my agent for that said, you must go into fiction. And I said, oh God, no. I said, I can't, I've never done any creative writing, I wouldn't know where to begin. And she said, just begin at the beginning, just sit down and do it. And I did. I ended up with a spare afternoon free, and I had no idea what to do with myself. I had no money to go shopping. I didn't know what to do. So I just hoiked my laptop down to the local library, and I kept thinking I was going to get thrown out for plugging it in and using that electricity. I just didn't. And I wrote a scene. And as soon as I'd written that, I thought, oh God, I've started a book, now I'm going to have to finish it. Yeah. Can't be one of those people.
So you're kind of an organic writer, so you start with a scene or an item or a sort of moment of inspiration and see where those characters go.
I did with that book, and actually...
So you've got a big whiteboard now, you kind of like fully plotted
yes, I have moleskin notebooks that I always twang the strap and, you know, use those for my notes. But as soon as I started to do it, I realised it was what I was supposed to do. It was like the universe knew before I did. I was the last person to get invited to that party, you know. And now I think, oh my God, you know, I wasted all those years. I love it. I just love it. Yeah.
So this kind of looped to what one of our viewer questions was, which was Helen Bennett, who wanted to know where does the inspiration come from for your novels? Do you kind of have to take yourself off and say, well, I'm going on an inspirational trip somewhere very stunning?
Yes, my next book's being set in the Turks and Caicos.
Or do you kind of have to go and sit in a dark room and with, you know, soundproof headphones on and just think, or do you just, it just happens?
You get it from life, you know, you talk to someone and they tell you a great story, or you read something, or you hear a great lyric in a song, you know, things like that.
I've selfishly got carried away. Do we have, and can you tell us things about a new novel? Have you had your inspiration? Are you in the schedule? What?
Yes, so the next book's coming out in May. That's called The Summer Without You. And it's...
I thought you were joking about the May thing. I thought you were being
so no. Next book's out for the summer. Oh, so in my head I'm thinking about all my winter readers, you know, when they're curled up in front of the fire, exhausted from Christmas. Now I'm thinking about them stretched out on a towel, needing to, you know, regenerate. So it's based in the Hamptons.
Sun cream on the Kindle.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now, Louise, you're our kind of only non-novelist, so kind of how did you structure this? Because you've got these two distinct parts with your book. You've got the recipes and then you've got the family history, but you needed one to do the other, but also the other to do the one. So how did you kind of get going, like turn it into a book rather than a kind of project?
It evolved as I researched and wrote and baked, and the recipes are themed to each chapter as well.
Yes.
So, for example,
I
start off with children, so my childhood memories about the tea shop, and then I recreate those childhood cake recipes. Yeah. So each chapter has got that theme, and the structure evolved really, and I followed my parents' love story about how they met and had their wedding reception in the tea shop.
Yeah, because you sort of seem to have gone much further back into their history than you maybe started out. You kind of like, well, I just need to know how much flour in this one because I'm doing a recipe book, and then it was suddenly this all unfolded.
It did, it all unfolded, and then during the process of writing, you know, I discovered that the pastry chef ancestors in our family came from a place called Poschiavo on the Swiss-Italian border. And I had to go, obviously. I know you've been to exotic places, but... And on that journey, I had to look for cakes as well. Obviously, sort of
your job sucks.
roaming around Poschiavo looking for my ancestors and cakes, and that became about 2 chapters, because it was one in search of the pastries, in search of my ancestors, and then when I came back, my father recreated the coffee Japanese cake, which he used to make in our tea shop, which I found in a cafe in Poschiavo, which was really incredible. So we then made that cake together for my children. So I got 2 children because I wanted to be able to pass the recipes on to my family as well. Yeah.
And so it must have been quite kind of emotional. Like you were obviously seeking solid hard facts and recipes for your readers, but kind of you can't not have kind of become sort of closer to your family as a result of this.
Yeah, it was an emotional journey. In fact, you know, during the writing of the book, my father became ill as well, and I noticed him sort of slowing down with the baking, but he was still keen to sort of show me and teach me the recipes, and it was lovely seeing my children learn from their grandfather as well, and also hear the stories about the tea shop.
Yeah, well, you're starting to answer. Lisa Stock from Twitter has asked, what was the experience of revisiting your father's memories like? So, did you kind of was there sort of a new angle that you got on him? Like,
I think what was really,
now I understand that a bit better.
I did actually. What was interesting is I started off like a journalist, like, you know, both journalists, and I turned up with my dictaphone and sat down in the dining room and tried to sort of get stories that way, and then realised that wasn't his natural way of talking.
Yeah, so it's not a room he
No, it wasn't natural at all. So then we'd start baking and he chatted and he told me things I don't think he would ever have told me if I'd been trying to formally find out those answers. So he then told me about growing up in his parents' tea shop.
Yeah.
And then he also had memories of his grandparents' tea shop, my great-grandparents, and just funny little stories would evolve about great Uncle Charlie who had chocolate flowing through his veins. Apparently this story goes in our family, and
but now I've indulged myself with all these questions about how wonderful this book is, because I've had a chance to look at it. But when is it out?
It's out on March the 13th, and then 1 month later the standalone ebook memoir's out as well, which is a longer version.
I see. Oh, I didn't know you were chopping it all up. Brilliant. Thank you. Now then, he is a best-selling crime and thriller novelist whose books have been published in 36 languages. Peter James is famous for his Detective Superintendent Roy Grace novels. I love him. which are based in his hometown and mine, Brighton, in East Sussex. But where does he get his ideas from, literally, and where does he do his writing? He is our first author over the series to give us a tour of his writer's room.
I was very, very shy as a kid. I was afraid of the dark. Every bump in the night I'd think was a sort of mad axeman who's coming to murder me. And I used to live out my fantasy life by writing about it. Roy Grace is based quite a large extent on a real-life former police officer, a guy called Dave Gaylor. And I met Dave the first time I was introduced to him about 15 years ago. Somebody said, you ought to meet this character. He's a homicide detective, quite interesting guy. And I went into his office at Brighton Police Station, and it was a complete tip. Blue and green crates everywhere, bulging with folders. And I said, are you moving? And he gave me a very sardonic smile, and he said, no, these are my dead friends. He is my real-life Roy Grace. And I think he has played an incalculable role in the authenticity that my books have, and which I strive so hard to maintain. I'm not always the sharpest tack in the box. I miss things quite often. So there's a huge amount of me in Roy, and vice versa, I think. 6 o'clock in the evening, I make a vodka martini with a ritual, either 4 olives or a lemon around the rim. Go in my office, sit down, fag music, and get in the zone. And I'll write till 9:30, 10 o'clock. First thing every morning, by 6:30, run 3 to 5 miles, have breakfast, and I go back to my study and I'll read what I wrote the night before and plan what I'm going to write that evening. One of the really exciting things about writing, or for me, is that you never know where an idea is going to pop in your head from. It could be after my second vodka martini. But an awful lot of what I write about has come out of my research with the police. Don't cross me. There was a critic in a magazine who gave me a really nasty review a couple of years ago, and I actually had her dissected on a post-mortem table.
So Peter James there with quite a sort of glamorous and specific regime he has. I'm quite relieved. I didn't want it to be too grisly. But Naomi, do you have a sort of specific time of day or a routine or a regime?
I definitely like to write in the morning because I'm very fresh and I feel ready for the day. If I write too late in the afternoon, I can kind of think, the light's fading, your energy is kind of a bit depleted, and you just think, oh, this is a wretched business. What am I doing? Whereas if I just do, and I don't need too many hours to write because I can spend the whole afternoon researching or something. So maybe 8 till 11, something like that. I can edit very happily for a long time, but writing into the blank page.
A bit of a burst.
Yeah, that has to be.
Feel it's out the way.
Exactly, and then you have a nice cup of coffee, reward yourself with something, and get on with the rest of the day. But the mornings is good for me.
This is it's Louise's reward system I'm interested in.
Yeah.
You write in the morning?
I'm an early bird. I always wake up early.
And then what happens? It's like, oh, I've been busy writing about this. I should probably just taste it again.
Bake a cake. I must taste that again and check what it's like. And I don't always eat cakes every day, but they help. They help a lot. I know there's a lot of anti-sugar at the moment, but I definitely like a cup of tea and cake. And it's a treat, like you say. If you have actually written 1,000 words, which is my aim, then it's nice to reward yourself, isn't it, girls?
Because it's me, it doesn't feel as bad. If I had a coffee and a biscuit, I think, coffee and cake, though, I think that's okay.
Now, Karen, it's your writing room that I want to know about. What is this? You've got a magical treehouse situation.
My treehouse. It is seasonal. So it's very much summertime. My children have a beautiful treehouse at the bottom of the garden.
Oh, so it's theirs.
I know. Lego everywhere. Got tissue pom-poms above my head. And yes, they're quite indignant if I do go down there. I usually edit down there actually because my laptop is really old, but I've got a bit of a superstition about it. So I've got lots of others that I just don't use, which drives my husband mad. And my poor knackered old laptop's got about 20 minutes battery. So I have to be near a power supply, which I don't have in the treehouse. Okay. So I tend to go down there to edit. The platform is built in the trees.
Yeah.
So I have these huge garden cushions and I lie on those and got wisteria. I mean, it's almost like Romeo and Juliet.
And you take your laptop up. there.
I do, and I just...
perilous if you're
I do, and there's a rope bridge. I mean, it's a bit Indiana Jones, to be honest. I mean, and the dogs can't follow me because their paws would get broken, you know, on the rope bridge. So they're kind of whining from the other platform, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to work. You know?
Right, well, we've learned a bit more about you three, but still to come on the show, author Lucy Diamond will face our quick fire question test, and we'll hear more from our guests. But first, what are the hottest titles we should be looking out for in 2014? It's February and there are lots of new and soon-to-be published books to look forward to for the rest of the year. But which ones do you choose and why? Crime, history, romance? Well, fear not, because members of the Pan Macmillan staff have stepped into the breach to guide you with their picks of the books to look out for in 2014.
This is my pick of 2014. It's Unwrapped Sky by Ruark Davison. It's a wonderfully written fantasy novel, and it has a pretty cool undersea city and some minotaurs.
My pick for 2014 is Claire Donahue's Never Look Back. It's a South London set book. It's thrilling and terrifying.
The book I'm most excited about this year is Night School by Richard Wiseman. It's based on new science and it's going to finally teach me how to get a good night's sleep, which is excellent.
The book I'm the most excited about this year is The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. It's a debut. It's set in Amsterdam in the 1600s and the city was full of riches, so it's really decadent and beautiful. It's slightly spooky, it's a little bit off-centre and it makes you feel like the characters are completely alive today. It's absolutely brilliant.
The book I'm most excited to read in 2014 is Jane Green's Saving Grace. I think it's going to be her funniest and most romantic novel to date.
The book I'm most looking forward to in 2014 is Tanya Byron's The Skeleton Cupboard.
The book I'm most excited about is Helen Oyeyemi's Boys No Bed. Helen is a phenomenal talent and to my mind one of our most exciting contemporary writers. What I love about this book is her magical brand of storytelling, its mischief, its charm. It's a book about mothers and daughters, about how families are formed and about the sidesteps and dances that people make around each other to work out their own relationships.
The book I'm most excited about in 2014 is The Flying Bath by Julia Donaldson and illustrated by David Roberts. I'm really excited to see a new David Roberts illustrated book because his illustrations are gorgeous.
Okay, so the book I'm most excited about is Chris O'Dowd's Moon Boy. You might have seen the TV series, which I love, and I love Chris O'Dowd as well. I think it's going to be really funny. It's about a small boy and his imaginary friend in Ireland, and it's really fun and enlightening.
The book that I'm most looking forward to in 2014 is The Axeman's Jazz by Ray Celestin. It's set in 1919 New Orleans. There's a serial killer running around the city and he says if you don't play jazz in all of the bars, someone's going to get killed. And Louis Armstrong's a character in it as well, and it's just brilliant. It's adventurous and exciting, really fun and quite scary, and this is my recommendation.
That's a right old literary smorgasbord there. So, any particular ones taking your fancy, Louise?
I'm really looking forward to Tanya Byron's The Skeleton Cupboard later this year. I find her very authentic and compelling anyway, as in the work that she does. And the book will be following her training as a mental health practitioner and covering some of the case studies. So I think it'd be really interesting to get an insight into what it was like training and about these interesting case studies as well.
Yeah. And were there any that weren't on the list that anyone else has sort of got their eye on for later in the year?
I'm looking forward to Edward St Aubyn's new book because I absolutely loved the Patrick Melrose novels. So they're completely brutal and difficult to read, a bit like what we were talking about before. I can't remember the title, but I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. And Karen, any?
Well, actually, off that list, I really like the Sound of the Miniaturist.
Such a great title.
It's beautiful and the colour's gorgeous. And yeah, I love Dutch literature, or literature that's based in Amsterdam. I loved Tulip Fever, I loved The Girl with the Pearl Earring, all of that. So it sounds to me like it's on to a winner. Sounds really good.
Now then, this month it was Lucy Diamond, author of Me and Mr Jones, who gives us her answers to our quick fire questions.
Jane Eyre is brilliant. I've read it lots of times. Every time I read it, there's always something new that I take from it. I think by a pool in the Mediterranean with the sun shining, crickets, glass of wine, that'll do me. Oh, I'm reading Longbourn at the moment by Jo Baker, which is this upstairs, downstairs version of Pride and Prejudice. So it's all from the servant's point of view. It's fantastic. Any of mine would be great, thanks. I'm looking forward to the new one by Jojo Boys. It's not out yet. It's out in a few days, I think. I loved all the Enid Blyton books. Famous Five, Secret Seven, 5 Point Outers. Brilliant. No, not really. Sorry. There's a few authors I really love. Lisa Jewell, everything by her I want to read. Jojo Moyes is great. Maggie O'Farrell. Oh, and Kate Atkinson is brilliant.
Thank you to Lucy there. She seemed very relaxed. Can I put you on the spot? Were there any kind of all-time favourite authors for you guys?
I don't know. In terms of, I love the classics, so I'm a big fan of Thomas Hardy when he's not being too miserable. Yeah, I know. It's a little depressing, but it's good for a winter's day like we have now. In terms of contemporary authors, I love John Banville. I think he's a real winner. I love that sort of lyrical, maximalist prose. I think I always admire the way he writes when I read his books. Yeah.
And Louise?
I really enjoyed Nigel Slater's book Toast for the way it connects food with emotions, and that really struck a chord with me. Yeah. I also love Joanne Harris's novel Chocolat as well. Once again, foodie themed.
Yeah. Karen, do you only read Christmassy novels?
No. Gosh, all-time favourite author, I would say John Irving, the American writer. Particularly his early stuff. I think there's a difference between able to write well and being able to tell a story. And I think he's genuinely one of the best storytellers around. He creates such vivid, bizarre worlds, but I love going there. I love it.
Now, Lucy was filmed there at the Pan Macmillan author fiction party, which was last week. Now, our fiction writers were there last night as well. Did you have fun? Was it nice to kind of get out of your writing clothes and see some other people in real life?
It's so gorgeous because, you know, when you're a writer, you're stuck in your office on your own. You know, it's just you and your screen and your notebook or your Post-its, whatever. And it's just heavenly, actually, once a year to all get together and drink champagne and talk books and talk covers and release, you know, your new release and press and whatever it is in your new book, and you know, you just talk shop and then you talk about everything else as well. But it's lovely, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, meeting the authors, I think, is just incredible because you can have such a chinwag about. And people are very honest as well. Yeah. Like, God, isn't it hard sometimes? You know, and then people are very candid about, you know, all different aspects of the craft. And do you like your cover? And you know, when do you write? And God, I haven't written anything in months.
Yeah,
you know?
You need to see other authors to sort of realise that it's not just crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's talking a lot about. The bar of shame on certain news websites.
Yeah, and when you've got to the bottom, you know it's time to start writing.
A lot of work displacement activities, and everyone
really does it. Yeah. It's a life everyone must dream of. Now then, if it really is a life that you dream of, we are launching our own literary version of The Voice. Each month, we will be asking unpublished authors to pitch their latest work in 20 seconds by sending in a short video of themselves, and then we'll ask our guest authors to give their thoughts and choose their favourites on the show. All you need to do is to contact us via email on the box on your screen or Twitter at Pan Macmillan or the hashtag BookBreak and tell us your name and a little bit about your unpublished novel. Leave us contact details and we'll be in touch if we'd like to feature you on the show. Now, we're nearly out of time. My thanks to Naomi Wood, Karen Swan and Louise Johncox for joining us on our very first episode of Book Break. If you want to get in touch with the programme, you can contact us on Twitter with any book-related questions. If you want to find out about any of the books that Pan Macmillan publish, you can go to their website, which is panmacmillan.com. And if you want to rewatch any part of the show, an on-demand version will be available shortly. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget about the competition. We are back next month, so we'll see you then. Goodbye.